Hello, my name's Tom, and in this video I'm going to show you how we can reamp using my Axe FX 2 and Reaper, but the same idea should really apply whether you're using any other modeler like a Helix or any other DAW. And what I'll also do is show you how you can use a modeler to reamp through real amps as well, and some various hybrid solutions for reamping using both modelers and real amps and different combinations you could try out yourself. So I'm just going to show the first example. I already recorded a track just for my Axe FX. So I recorded two parts at the same time. So recorded DI on input 3, which is just the plain signal. And then on the other tracks I recorded, you can either do 1 and 2 for stereo or just 1. I recorded the actual Axe FX signal going through. So I'll just play you a bit of both. Okay, now the much quieter DI signal. So as you can hear, that's just the plain guitar going in with nothing done to it. It's much quieter, but that's that's the level you want for actually sending it back into the Axe FX. So in order to send it back, what you need to do is you need to go to channels here, then go to add new hardware object, and then you can just select output here. So I've already selected it. So this is going back into the Axe FX. And then on the Axe FX itself, what you need to do is you need to go to the front panel. You select the IO button, and then you go to page input and just turn the button around a couple of times to select USB. So what you're doing is you're telling it to receive the incoming signal from the USB at the back, which normally goes out, rather than the default input at the front for guitar. Okay, so what I'll have to do is I'll just have to switch it back so that it's using the Axe FX as the interface, because I'm using my Focusrite interface at the moment for microphone. And then I'll show you. I'll actually show you it recording the signal coming back in. So here I'm on the Focusrite. Select the Fractal Audio Systems USB. See, that is 1 for recording the signal from the Axe FX. 3 is what you use for recording the DI signal. So after you've finished reamping, you need to remember to go back to the Axe FX and change it back to normal audio input, or else when you play it back, it will sound all weird and echoey. So here you go, I've soloed the track which is reamped. I'll just play you a little bit just so you hear it. Okay, so that's fairly easy to do. But what else I've been experimenting with is actually sending out the DI signal back to real amps. So I've got a separate Engel preamp and power amp, which is all stereo. So that gives me a bit more flexibility. So I can run the preamp on its own, or I can go straight into a power amp, or I can go from a preamp on the Axe FX and go into the front panel, bypass the preamp, and then go into the power amp. And then I haven't got a cab or microphone set up upstairs. So what I use is a load box like this. So yeah, so something very important is if you're going to use a proper valve amp, then you need to have some kind of load on it, whether it's a load box like this or whether it's actual speaker cab. So I'll just show you what I'm actually doing on the Axe FX and how I'm sending it. So yeah, so this is the preset. I was just sending it back to and recording. But I'll have a look. I'll show you some. I've got some other ones set up for different 4-channel methods. So if I go to 7, this is the one I was using if I was sending it back to the amp and recording. So what it will do is it will go back in through the USB, come in the input, and then using a drive. So this is just a standard overdrive. And then I go into the effects loop. And then from the effects loop, I go out the back of the Axe FX into the front of the amp. And then from the amp, I then go out of the speaker and it goes into the back here. You need to make sure you set it all up right. And then from here, I connect this to my Focusrite interface, and it's powered from there as well. So you just have to click the button so you get the red power. And then from there, I can record from there and add all the, and then in the door, I add all the IR, speaker cabs, any reverb, any EQ I want. But another approach is if you want to use it and well, there's several different approaches. What you might want to do is actually send it back into it's record for real amp, but then send it back into the Axe FX so you can still get like all the different effects in the Axe FX, because otherwise you're losing that, but you might want to have a real amp. So in this example, this is one done for clean, but it doesn't really matter, is it goes back from the USB. I've got a bit of compression on it to start with, and it goes back into the real amp. And then at this point, you need to still keep the load box on, but you need to have a way to get it back into the Axe FX. So with all the load box stuff still on, what I then do is you have a line out here. So this is a TFS lead, so you need to use the right lead. It's like a stereo lead. And from there, you can go back into the TFS effects in at the back of the Axe FX, and you can record that, but you still need to have this connected up. Well, you could use a separate power here, but I still have this connected up to the Focusrite so that it powers it through the normal mic cable. So from there, you go back here, back into the TFS effects back in on the back of the Axe FX, and then you can load up your IRs and your cab, and then you go through various effects and then back out the output, back through the USB and back into your DAW. So that's another option. And something else you might want to do, if you want to mic it up, if you don't have a load box, but you want to actually be able to reamp and use a real cab and a real microphone, then the problem with that is if you want to send it back into the Axe FX, if you don't, well, you could, there's two options. One is you could use a microphone and then you could put it into the Focusrite. But the problem is, I'll just show you on here again, is on preferences here, you have to choose, normally you have to choose one or the other. But there is some software, some additional software you can use, which I'll put that in the description down below, and that gives you the option to actually use two different interfaces. So I think it's called ASIO for all, but I'll check and I'll put it in the description anyway, the link. So what you can do then is you can use both the Fractal interface, and you can use the Focusrite interface to take in the mic from the cab and do it that way. So that's one option. But if you don't want to do it that way, another option is, if you're going to put the mic, is you could put the microphone back into the Axe FX, but the problem is that it needs to be line level, and a microphone isn't going to be line level. But what you can do is you can buy one of these. There's loads of these on like eBay or whatever, and they're only about £40 new, but you can get them for about 20 quid on eBay. And then this is just a microphone preamp. So what this basically will do, you can colour it a bit because it adds a bit of tubes. Some people think it makes them better, but it will bring it up to line level. So then you can have the microphone from the cab, and then you get it up to line level, and then you can put it back into your effects return. And then once it's back in, then you can then put it through the cab, EQ, pitch, whatever, and then back out again into your Axe FX. So there are some other options as well. So as I said, with my Engel, I've got a separate preamp. So if I was just, before I had the load box, I found I could actually get a better sound with the preamp by doing this. I'll show you. So actually it's still on the same one, but it's earlier ones here. So what I was using with just a preamp is I was going out of the preamp, and then into the tube pre. Now, this is a full amp model in the Axe FX, but the actual preamp section is neutral. So it's a little confusingly named tube pre because people think it's a tube preamp, but it's really more for use as a power sim. So it's more for use with a tube pre. So you can use a real valve tube amp, and then you put it in here. And then what I actually did for the power amp settings is I copied the same ones which were used for the Engel ones and the Axe FX, and copied them in just to the tube pre. And this does actually make it sound better. So this sounds better than just the... So when I first bought the Axe FX, I didn't really use just the preamp much on its own because the Axe FX sounded just as good. But if I used the real valve preamp and then used the effectively what is power amp modeling, then it actually sounded better. So it actually improved it. But now I'm using the real power amp as well. So which adds an extra layer of depth as well. Obviously you don't have the same variety of amps and sounds that you have in the Axe FX, but it does work well. And another option you might want to consider or have a go at is to actually use just the preamps from Axe FX. So they don't actually call it preamps, separate preamps, but what you can do is you can go to, so for an example here, I've got several setups. I've got one X and Y. So you'll see it switch over, X, Y. So here I've got a USA, so this is from Tri-Axis yellow channel. And I've got the power sag on it. So this is basically the power amp bit. So what I do on this is going out again for USB, putting some overdrive on it. And then this is going back into the real amp. And with the preamp on bypass, so I bypassed the preamp, or you could just go straight into power amp and then back into the load box and then into my interface and then into the DAW. And if you select the power supply section here, then what you do is you just turn this down, turn it all the way down. Go down. Didn't want to do it. Hang on. There, you just put it onto 0 and it's PA, power amp off. So what you're doing then is you're taking the preamp, which is the model, the Tri-Axis, which is just a preamp anyway. And then I'm putting it into my real valve power amp to use both. And that sounds better as well. So on this preset, what I've got set up, I've got 4 different versions. So I've got a tri-axis, I've got a diesel preamp, I've got oh, it's yellow one as well, but it's different. That's because I haven't selected that. Okay. No, but see, yeah. So I've got four different preamps, which I can use with the power amp, and that works well as well. So yeah, so that's quite a lot of different things you can try. So you can try going from the preamp of the model into a real power amp. You can go from an independent preamp. So if you actually if you didn't have a separate preamp, the other thing you could do is you could take it out the effects loop in a real amp and then send that effects loop, which would be line level, back into the Axe FX. But you need to be very careful to make sure you've got a load on your power amp. So you still need to have either a load box attached or a speaker, or you could damage your amp. But yeah, I think there's quite a lot of different things to try. One thing to be a bit careful of, you might need to fiddle about a bit, is the effects loop, is the volume levels on here. So first time I tried it with an overdriven sound. It made a lot of noise. It sounded terrible until I adjusted it to be the right level. So you might want to do a combination of the main and the level here on the effects loop, and on the output on the amp, and on the any load box or whatever. So you might want to fiddle around with these to get the best combination. And when I tried it with a clean amp as well, it was way too quiet. So I thought it wasn't working, but I just needed to turn some of it up. So I'd keep the volume down low on those and then gradually build it up and then experiment just to see what works best. So yeah, hopefully this has given you some ideas to try out. And yeah, I think the thing is just to experiment with it and see what works best with you. One disadvantage if you're using the real amps, if you're using the real preamps, is I'll just show you what I did to get around that. Is they are definitely noisier than the modelled amps, so you get a lot more noise. So what I had to do, this is the one again where I just put a preamp in, and then I used the tube pre, so I'm using effectively power amp simulation, and then it's quite hissy. So, but what I did was just put an extra noise gate at the end. So you might have to fiddle about with noise gates and stuff as well, just so it doesn't make too much noise. But in the end, that worked out well as well. So yeah, so hopefully this has been worth watching. You've got some good ideas. I've got quite a few other videos now on YouTube, so you might find some other ones which are interested, so have a look. Okay, so cheers. Thanks for watching. Bye.